Welcome to A State of Mind podcast. I'm here today with Dee, who's a student in a PhD program, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, this will be an interesting conversation. This episode will be a little bit different, so we're going to touch on some world events. I know that your family's in Iran and you're coming from there, and so that was part of the impetus for this episode with all the protests happening there and everything going on there, and also your experience, basically being an immigrant here to America in today's age. And so, how would you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Well, I don't want to introduce myself completely like my name or last name because of the legitimate concerns that I have here. And especially because I am a student immigrant and I've already faced some issues regarding this student visa that I have, and also because of everything going on right now in the US and the threat of the ICE and the threat in my own country, like being able to go back there. I just thought that after discussing this with a few friends that I should just keep it anonymous. So I would appreciate if I am just called as Dee here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to speak to that. So we're going to keep, you'll just be Dee, and we're not even going to show your face. So no real identifying information about you. And we weren't even sure if we were going to, record this episode, but we talked about it and something that you wanted to share about, and that, it just seemed timely and important. And it was interesting in talking to you, like there's the concern for your family, of course, in Iran right now, and that anything you said on a public format like this could be used against them. There's also the concern that one way or another you might end up moving back to Iran, and that anything you said, again, could be used against you, could cause you to be imprisoned or attacked by the state in some way. Then there's also the concern of the administration that you could say something that would offend them. And so part of the interesting perplexities and complexities here is the ways in which you've been, I don't know what the right words are exactly, criticized and maybe attempted to control, mistreated, controlled, told that what you're saying or what even your own lived experience is wrong somehow, even from people here in America. And then on the other side of the political spectrum, because we can assume most universities, tend to be more liberal, more left-wing. Of course, there's all the concerns and fears around ICE, the Immigration Control Enforcement Agency, and all the shenanigans and how aggressive they've been and how many people have been rounded up and deported without due process. And since you are an immigrant here, even though you have the right paperwork and your student visa and everything, there's a legitimate fear among everyone in this country now who's here on any kind of visa that they could get caught up in some kind of immigration thing and just deported the next day without any process or court hearing, right? And that's a valid fear too. So there's almost like just kind of naming these three pieces, all of which have been adversarial towards you.
I know. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and you just described it fully and gave a clear picture of the position I am in right now. And I wanted to also bring up an example, which is like a real example from the news that I've been reading recently about these massacres going on in Iran and the bodies that have been just carried to the forensic centers. And there was this news piece that stood out to me, and there was this teenager among the bodies who wasn't dead yet, but because he was afraid of being shot by the security forces, he just pretended to be alive among the bodies in the truck for 3 days, and then until the family came to identify the body, and then they realized that he was alive. And he was alive, but he was badly injured. But he said that he he was just trying to stay quiet because everybody else, like the other bodies, um, who made moaning sounds or noises from um, among them, they were shot by um, these security forces
Oh my
just to
gosh.
finish them off, even yeah, if they were alive. So
Oh, that's so
the
terrible.
fact that he had to stay silent just to survive,
Yeah.
I thought that resonates a lot with me. Like, of course, it's not comparable, but we could use that as a metaphor just um,
Yeah.
to see what's going on here. And the I I have this tendency to look for patterns and like find similarities in different situations, and I see a lot of similarities here that I have to also stay silent and just to be able to
Hmm.
survive. And the, this is a whole different story, of course.
Yeah.
The scale,
Well,
but
that's a hell of a story. Thank you for sharing that. And it's like a perfect, window into how terrible things are there. And just imagine someone for 3 days pretending to be dead, and then until their family comes, they can get out. And if they had made noises that they were alive, they wouldn't have been taken to the hospital. They would
yeah,
have been
because I
killed.
was also um, told by my family and friends not to get myself into trouble, not to go to this podcast, or not to even publish papers against the government or the regime. But I also feel this urge and desire, which is more about my values, that and it's not just about my voice, it's about the fact that I am here and I came here to be the voice of the many people in Iran, and especially women, but also all marginalized people. So I wanted to stay committed to that
Hmm.
value and mission that I had for
Right.
myself in my work.
Yes.
And yeah, despite all the risk, I don't even see that as much of a big risk, because like we have so many activists, so many journalists, people in big media outlets whose lives and their families' lives are in big threat and danger in Iran. And I'm a nobody. Like nobody really knows me, and I'm not even taken seriously by the academic community in which I'm a part of. So I just thought that I'm just a voice among millions other voices of Iranians who are just trying to give voice to other people in Iran who do not
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
outlet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, do you want to just share with us like how you were born and raised in Iran? Like how long have you been in America now?
So it's been almost 5 years I've been here, and my F1 student visa is valid for 6 years. And after 6 years, like I have to, like a little bit before 6 years, I could apply for another year to work here. But uh, yeah, I want to start by just like another drawing another parallel between like what is going on in the world and around about Iran, and what was going on in the university, the community
Yeah.
I am part of. So uh, I think that what we are witnessing now, with especially these many activists, and most of them are academics who are being mouthpieces of the regime in Iran and silencing the real voices of the people in Iran, or just downplaying the atrocities committed by this regime. I've felt that, and I've seen a lot of that being played out by the academic community that I am in at the university. And it was just shocking to me that people could be so blind to their own I don't know what to call it. Like when Trump won the election and like for the second time, there was this whole fuss that was made by many professors at this university, a liberal university, right? And when I got admitted here, I was told that I'm so lucky. This is like one of the best universities, very liberal. But that wasn't my experience. And starting from the first semester, when I started talking about what people in Iran are going through and like the women's experiences, I'm one of those people. I'm also like my lived experience was just ignored, and they once I started talking about like the fact that some of those readings that we were assigned to, they were more aligned with those in power, and especially because they are anti-Western and anti-imperialism.
So
they kind of downplay the role of those other powers, for example, Islamic regime in Iran is considered very anti-imperialist, and they have a lot of allies in the West, and they have a lot of individuals who have penetrated these institutions and academic institutions also. I'm just saying that because of those like a lot, we see a lot of those regime apologies. The narrative has been so promoted that has affected and impacted like other institutions and other individuals, including my own professors. So
so just to kind of go like drill in there a little bit more, you came here about 5 years ago. Started at the university, and it sounds like from day one this was a surprise to you to discover that when you're here in America in this supposedly most liberal university, most liberal city,
exactly,
when you talk about the oppression of women, you being one of them, and just people in general in Iran, you get people kind of criticizing you, not wanting you to say that here in this country.
So this is again like I got my master's degree in Iran, and because of censorship and the professors in Iran, they are not very free. They don't have the freedom to talk about a lot of things. But despite that, they've been very vocal. They've tried their best to educate us and tell us about like what's going on really underneath. For example, like I don't know, Salman Rushdie, the person, like the artist or
the author,
author, who was threatened, and like he was in hiding for many years. We were not allowed to read his works. My major was English language and literature, but our professors always praised that, and they said like we are not allowed to teach it, but like it's really good if you go and read those. But then when I came here, like I just saw the professors here justifying the violence that Salman Rushdie faced. They were justifying that, saying that he wasn't like he wasn't in a place to like criticize or like write about these things. And then
why would they say that? That's so bizarre.
Because they again, it's about religion and Islam, and they want to show a good picture of
They don't want to criticize
Muslims
Islam.
and Islam. Yeah. And like we have Muslim professors, and especially because of that, I was threatened kind of into deportation by
Wow.
by
Yeah.
my professors when they didn't like the language that I used. And
So you had these,
like that wasn't the whole story, like, but part of that, and I am sure that was one of the reasons that they ostracized me, and then they stopped.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just shared, but you've been threatened by deportation from these liberal professors here. Mind blowing to hear about.
Yeah, and specifically from
because they don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, the faculty and
right?
the whole department.
Yeah,
like yeah, it wasn't just a single professor, but a few professors came to that agreement that like they had to do that. And even though that's my own professor, my former advisor, knew that like that wasn't the case and they didn't have that right, but then they did that, and I had to report them to this Office of Equity and Justice, and they also didn't do anything about that. And I didn't follow up. I didn't even want to go as far as to getting her or like other people involved fired, and I just let it be. But
so really
I've been deeply affected by that.
Yeah, it's disturbing. It's hard. We've been through a lot, obviously. I mean, just to share with our listeners, Salman Rushdie is a famous author, a literary figure. He wrote this book called The Satanic Verses, I think in 1989 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was a death edict against him from the Iranian regime, sentencing
from
him to
Khomeini
death from the top,
time.
right?
Yeah.
The top leader, supreme leader of Iran. And then he, so he's had to have security and be in hiding ever since then. And
he just got
severely injured.
He's
recently.
So very recently.
Very real thing. And so it's just incredible that obviously the Iranian regime right now is incredibly oppressive and censoring and killing all kinds of people and all kinds of human rights abuses. And then we have the kind of first, and this is the part that we were going to talk about at least a little bit, which we're talking about now, that the left-wing activists who in theory are supporting human rights around the world. In the case of Iran and other cases, it's like they want to look the other way. Any criticism of Islam gets called kind of right-wing or colonialist or racist or Islamophobia.
Or like Islamophobic.
Instead of seeing the reality of like, let's look at the human rights issues. And it's just
I mean, it's really sad that they justify all the crimes committed by these regimes just because they don't want to promote Islamophobia. And I'm not also sure and not in a place to say that's the case with all Islamic regimes, but at least with Iran and the Islamic regime that came to power from 1979, I can tell about my own experience, and also like the history. People could just take a look and read like the crimes that they've committed for decades since they came to power. But this regime is also different from other Islamic regimes, or it's not just about Muslims and Muslim community. It's about the power. So, like for example, in Middle East, we have other Muslim nations, a lot of Muslim communities in Turkey, in Arab countries, but they are not a theocracy like Iranian regime. So the Iranian regime is built on ideology and built on terror and fear, and that's how they maintain power. Since they're coming into power, 1979, after the right after the revolution, there was this 8 years war between Iran and Iraq,
Right.
and that war was also kind of instigated by Western powers and the United States. Like they had a role with supporting like Iraq regime at the time, providing the military equipments and everything. But after that 8 years of war, the regime in Iran, they started these mass executions called as executions of the 80s. And they killed a lot of leftists, because but like they among them, like there were a lot of innocent people, leftists at the time. So when Islamic regime came to power, they kind of hijacked the revolution. It wasn't an Islamic regime, Islamic revolution, as they say. That revolution was like a call for like democracy, a democratic regime. And Khomeini, who was the face and the leader of that regime at the time, he originally promised to just transition the country into a democracy. And at the time, Jimmy Carter was in power in the US, and Jimmy Carter was the first, I guess, at least like as it relates to Iran, American leader that wanted to, he was like anti-imperialist, anti-Western intervention. So he thought that, okay, the Shah or the king at the time in Iran was considered a Western puppet by many Iranians at the time. So he was like, let's pressure the Shah and weaken his regime, and they paved the way for Khomeini to come into power. And Khomeini turned out to be a dictator, and he stayed in power, and he didn't like all the promises about democracy. They were just like lies, and they they just started this dictatorship. And after him, Khamenei has been in power for decades, and he's been the leader, the dictator leader since then.
Yeah, it's an incredible history, and thanks for sharing about that. I think my understanding in part was, like you just said, Jimmy Carter was, anti-imperialist and supporting like for a change there with the Shah that the U.S. had basically installed in the earlier coup and helped support. And then, but the United States also didn't want Iran or any other country at the time to become communist. And so I was watching that, learning about the history of Iran recently, that we were then supporting the clerics, i.e. the Islamicists, the Islamic fundamentalists, because we didn't want it to become communist. And that ended up, of course, making a situation where we're
they feared that. That's why there was this democratically elected leader in Iran, Mossadegh, who was very popular at the time, but he was overthrown. The prime minister in Iran was overthrown by the US and the UK, because the British, they were against the nationalizing of oil, because Mossadegh didn't want the British to control oil industry in Iran. And the British collaborated with the US, and they overthrew Mossadegh and put Shah back in power, who was kind of like physically sick at the time. And there were also a lot of unrest going on in Iran. And Jimmy Carter used that unrest as an excuse to to pressure the Shah at the time, and then also
Yeah.
bring Khomeini into power. They kind of facilitated the radical Islamist
Yeah,
power
maybe
in
just for a
Iran.
moment I could share a little bit about that history that I've
Yeah,
been learning
yeah,
about,
yeah.
which is I think it was before World War One. The British were getting involved there, and they were talking with Russia about, if you invade from the north, then we can invade from the south. And then in World War One, the Russian government collapsed and lost World War One, and so the British never did that. But then they went in and signed some oil rights, with them, and where it was giving like something like 84% of the money would go to England and the English oil company, and like 16%, I don't know if I'm getting the number exactly right, to the Iranian people. And they had that deal in place with Iranian oil until that was part of what led to, after World War II, that 52 or 51 revolution, and they were going to be, in theory, finally, they were trying to form a democratic government.
Yeah.
And the British and American interests
They
didn't want
that.
the democracy there.
They didn't want.
So
Yeah,
there's this amazing history with the grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, who is called Kermit Roosevelt Jr., which is a funny name. But Kermit Roosevelt Jr. was in the CIA, and they sent him over there with CIA people.
Yeah.
And apparently the CIA back then, it might still be like this to some way today, but it had very little oversight, less oversight than it has today. And Eisenhower said, we don't want the democratically elected government. We want someone we can work with, i.e. like a kind of dictator.
Yeah.
So they overthrew the democratically elected government. It was called Operation Ajax. And part of the way they did that was they talked to the army guys, and the army guys tried to do a coup, but what was his name? How do you say the?
Mohammad Mossadegh.
Yeah, so he was the democratically elected leader of Iran at the time, and he was smart, and he knew that the army was potentially going to do a coup. And so when they tried to do it, he had them arrested. Actually, he had his own men there to arrest them. And apparently this guy, Kermit Jr., the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, was watching the whole thing literally through binoculars. And it was supposed to be this dramatic coup where they were going to arrest him. And he surprised them by having his own men in the bushes come out and arrest the army guys. And so then he ran down the street and escaped. And he decided to stay there. And then someone gave him an idea to, okay, here's another way you could try to overthrow the democratically elected government. There's all these workers, on the streets of Iran, like construction workers and guys, they don't have a lot of money. Just pay them to do pro-government protests, but then at the end of the protest, tell them to go and rampage and loot shops and burn things down and cause a ruckus. And so the CIA literally paid these people to protest for the government, and then do bad things like break shop windows, beat people up, light things on fire, basically riot.
Yeah.
And they were paying them money to do that. And the government didn't want to stop the people because it looked like they were doing a rally in favor of the government. And he kept asking them to stop looting and burning, and they kept doing it, and the CIA kept paying them to do it, and then eventually it led to this chaos that helped overthrow the government.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy history.
Yeah, it's
so that was 1953.
Great that you mentioned that, but right now, it's not the CIA anymore, but
right.
it's the foreign intervention is not U.S. anymore or the Western powers, but it's the neighboring countries and the allies and the axis of resistance, which is supported by the Islamic regime in Iran. And they also brought a lot of armies from those countries and from Hezbollah and Iraq to do all these things during the protest. And
so that's terrible. So the Iran government has brought in armies. And they
promoted the narrative that the protesters did these looting and the riots, and they were destructing the people's cars and properties and everything. But then they said that it was the protesters just to
so this is in the current day they've been doing that. Yeah, so we're in a situation now where there's been these big protests, and something like 5,000 people have just been shot and killed.
No, 5,000 is
that's a low end.
No, it's way more than that. So based on the latest stats
Uh-huh.
from this website that they do fact check. At least 15,000
Oh my gosh.
confirmed deaths, and those confirmed deaths are just the ones that have been identified, and the bodies are under review to be identified by their families. 5,000 of them have been identified already,
Got it.
but 10,000 are just not identified, but they are under review just to be
Oh, so 15,000. I mean, it's a huge
at
massacre of
least.
so many innocent people.
So many injured, and then
Mm.
also a lot more arrested. And the footages that were coming out from Iran, and the bodies that you see in body bags, you don't see any woman body there. And they said, the regime said that they've been sent to for like tests on their wombs and stuff like that, and we don't even know what happened to women's body. But we also know that women protesters who got arrested and are detained, they have been gang raped by the regime forces and
terrible.
actors, and they've been calling their families asking for emergency pills. It's horrible what's going on and what they've been doing to lots of children killed as young as 3 years old.
It's just unfathomable how the level of depravity and oppression and violence. Do you want to share with us anything you want to share about like your personal experience, your family, people you know there?
So fortunately, my family are safe for now. They haven't been like directly impacted. Of course, they are impacted by the situation and everything. It's horrible what's going on in Iran right now, but like they haven't been injured or anything. But my own experience as a woman in Iran, I had an encounter with morality police like a decade ago, and that was horrible. And I can, like, just by that brief experience that I had, I can tell and testify, like, to like how bad, how far they could go, like to just. Do
you want to share anything about that? Like, what had them interact with you?
So we have in Iran the morality police, which is this. Police sector that polices the bodies of women in public, in the public and in the streets, and they just arrest them. And we've been hearing a lot of news about most of these women who got arrested, getting raped by them. But then I wasn't even sure. I thought that like that was just like made up stories, until I got caught by them in the street with my young sister at the time. She was just like 10, 12 years old, and I was in my 20s. And just because part of my neck was showing exactly like Mahsa Amini, who just got murdered by this regime 3 years ago, like almost 5 years ago, 4 years ago, like in 2022, in September 2022, he got killed by the morality police over like the hijab, because part of her neck and her hair was showing. And that was exactly like the issue with me. But I was lucky at the time to be able to get myself out of that situation. But the way that they arrested me, and they were pushing me so aggressively toward the van. They were just trying to push me into the van, but then they were humiliating me, calling me names and calling me things like whore. And then one of the police officers whispered in my ear, like I started to resist. I started by resisting first and defending myself that nothing was wrong with my hijab, and I'm really okay in that sense. And then they got more aggressive and they were like, how dare you, you fucking whore, and things like that. And then I thought that I'm not going to get anywhere with them if I resist. And I started begging and pleading that like my sister wouldn't be able to go back home if they arrest me. And then they took a look at my sister, who was standing a little bit farther and watching the scene, how they were just beating me and pushing me toward the van. And they took a look at her, and she was so young and innocent, and they whispered into my ear that just because of your sister, because she's so young, and you know what happens when we take you to the detention, or we take you there, and what happens to you, and we don't want that happen to your sister. Yeah, and that by that they meant like they're gonna gang rape you and rape you, and
wow.
yeah. So and then I was like, I had to thank them, and I had to just get myself out of there. And then they pushed me, get away. And again, like, so humiliating. It was such a terrible experience, so traumatizing, that I had to go home and cry for hours. And that was when
I mean, you have real lived experience. So I want to come back to this point. In a more sane world, there would, 99% of the people in Europe and in America and in Canada, and especially educated people, especially people at a university at the PhD level, would understand how terrible the human rights abuses are there, and they would be outraged, and they would have a tremendous amount of sympathy for you. And so for you to have this experience of coming from such an impressive, horrible Islamic society to this country, and then having professors try to teach you that there are good things about that country because they're somehow anti-imperialist and anti-Western, and that we shouldn't criticize Islam even if these morality police are gang raping people. It shows this like kind of sick divide in our culture where everything has become polarized between the left and the right.
Yeah.
And people have lost the ability to have discernment and nuance and understand that, yeah, they're good forms of Islam and they're really fucked up forms of Islam. And what's happening in Iran and in Saudi Arabia are examples of extreme, religious fundamentalism that's terrible, not only to women, but also to a lot of the men. And there's issues like slavery and all the rest of it. And it's just incredible to me that, this is something we were talking about before we started recording, but the Israel-Palestine conflict has gotten so much media attention and so many big protests on all these, and we don't see any protests like that about the human rights abuses in Iran, even when they're so horrible to women.
They don't even talk about it. Like,
don't even talk about it.
We had students from Palestine, and they got a lot of support, and the professors have been very vocal about that, but unfortunately not so much about Iran. I don't know. It's just it's really sad that for their ideologies, they cannot be more fair in their approach, at least. Like, they do not really practice what they preach. And their moral standards are not based on humanities and fairness and equality, but it's just their ideologies. And
yeah, what would you say? Could you speak to like what you sense the ideologies are of these teachers, professors, of the college administration here? I mean, they're very much pro-Palestinian. They don't want to talk about Iran. They're very anti-Trump. Well, so they're against ICE and immigration, and yet they threaten you with deportation when you share your own lived experience in Iran.
I know, yeah. I don't want to feed into this argument of like making this about only Islam. Like we have fundamentalism all around the world, and fundamentalism is a problem everywhere.
Yeah.
So Islamic fundamentalism, there are a lot of studies and a lot of research, like how this has been like a response to Western fundamentalism, and also it has been a result of Western intervention, like this radical
Right.
Islamists.
That is a part of the history there in
Yeah.
Iran, especially.
Yeah. So it's not probably the best way to put when we just make it about Islam. Because my own experience as an Iranian woman is we have a lot of Muslim people who are very so opposite of the regime. Like it's more about the power. When they have power and they are very fanatics about that, and they just want to stay in power, and they want to protect their ideologies, stick to their ideologies and protect that power. Yeah.
I guess I'm just thinking about how if we look at it from the perspective of human rights and individual rights and valuing the life of every human being equally, and this idea of equality and this idea of human rights, we could say it comes from Europe, but I think it's really a fundamental human thing. And I think a lot of people around the world obviously resonate with that and like that. And it seems like I just don't understand why more people aren't being motivated by this idea of human rights instead of, because it doesn't have to be about Islam, like you're saying, or Christianity. It could be about human rights. And we could apply it. And if you have that perspective of human rights, we could look at all these issues.
We do have a lot of activists whose moral standards are just like based on human rights. We have a lot of activists who are pro-Palestine, but then they also empathize with Iranians. But then they get labeled as Zionists because, that happens a lot because a lot of people cannot see the complexity, that they cannot see that it doesn't negate the fact that Iranians are being oppressed by their regime, which is because it's Islamic and they've been supporter of the Palestinian cause for decades. If they are protesting that regime, that doesn't make them Zionists. But even if they are Zionists, we have some Iranians, like a good portion of Iranians, they are actually siding with Israel because they believe that Israel is the enemy of their enemy, which is the enemy of the Islamic regime. So since childhood, when we went to school, we were like starting age 7, we were set into lines before going to class, and we were forced into shouting death to Israel, death to America, death to the England.
Wow, so you were forced to shout that when you're 7 years old.
Yeah, starting that with school. So they indoctrinate the children with their ideologies, which is very anti-Israel, anti-West. That's why the Iranian people have witnessed like the atrocities that this regime has been committing for decades, and that like if they see we had to read a lot about Palestinians too in our textbooks as kids. So they see if like this is the regime that's supporting Palestinian cause, and they are shouting death to Israel, and they are doing committing these crimes themselves. So they are not really their cause is not legitimate to us.
That's interesting. And I totally get how the Iranian regime uses that issue to try to control people and control the narrative. What I don't get is how American educated PhD people would in any way be influenced by that, because it's not that hard to distinguish
That's
fundamental Islam
again,
from more
yeah,
moderate Islam. It's not that hard to distinguish. You could be pro-Palestinian and pro-Iranian people.
yeah.
It doesn't seem that
That's
complicated.
again about power and like how they want to protect their position of power. And even though these academics and these professors, they don't have any power, the power that they have is so limited, yet they use it like in the same way that the leaders that they criticize, they threaten me into deportation, but then they play the victim and talk about how like the president is doing these mass deportations, yet they use that to scare students and threaten them, and which is a crime, which is
it's terrible.
like
It's terrible to happen to you. Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap up because of our time soon here. But again, it's possible to be against Trump, against the ICE crackdown, and pro the people of Iran, obviously. And it's a shame that our society's been so polarized that anything Trump says he's for, the other side seems automatically against, and it's almost like a cartoon at this point. But one of the things you shared with me that I thought was interesting, the university administration sent out multiple emails about the Palestinian cause. Is that true? But not about anything about Iran or any of these other issues in the world? Like, why? It's just interesting to me that one issue has become.
Yeah, they just sent.
Why would they highlight that one issue out of all the problems in the world?
I know, and it's funny. Like, I got a lot of emails. Like, not a lot, but I got some emails when there was this 12 days of war between Iranian government and Israeli government just last year. Mm-hmm. And even though, I'm not really liked by the department, still some professors send like an email to sympathize with me, because it was good. Israel that was attacking, and it was like aligned with their narrative. But when the Iranian regime was doing that, I didn't get any.
So these professors sympathized with you as a person from Iran when Israel's attacking them, meaning they're sympathizing with the Iranian regime. But when the Iranian regime is killing 15,000 innocent people, they're not sympathizing with you. They're not sending an email checking in on you.
No.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't believe the world we're in right now. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sorry that you've had these experiences here. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Is there any last words you want to speak in closing here?
Yeah, just that, like, I feel like people should start by themselves. And like, as I told you, people who do not even have a lot of power, yet when they have the chance, they exercise that limited power to in a worst way possible. I don't know how to say it, but then they are so quick and loud to talk about other regimes of power, as long as it fits their storyline and their own ideologies. And
that's interesting. Yeah, you've really seen the role of power and the way it can be abused in different contexts. Yeah, well, I hope that we have a return to just fundamental human rights and dignity and honoring all human life and working toward a more just and fair and safe world for all people, including all women, right? The ability to choose how you dress, the ability to live the life you want to live. So. Yeah,
and also not erase their experiences, their lived experiences.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk. Yeah. I appreciate that.